On point 2 is on a very pertinent statement made by Foreign Minister Jaishankar that multilateralism is under attack. And on point 3 is on the eruption of violent protests in Leh and Wangchuk, calling off the strike. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Kremlin says Trump's claim on war in Ukraine are mistaken. Russia's top diplomat will update US on actual position. Air Chief Marshal AP Singh to fly MiG-21 Bison with call sign Badal 3 in final sortie. India in talks with African nations to bring fresh batches of cheetahs with 8 to 10 likely to arrive from Botswana by December. NCW takes cognizance in posh Delhi ashram molestation case. Lookout circular issued against Baba Chaitanya Nand, accused of sexually assaulting girls. Madras High Court orders CBI probe into Dalit BSP leader Armstrong's 2024 murder case. Court slams police for lapses in investigation. Food safety raids in Telangana reveal major hygiene violations at pizza chains. Nearly half of the 55 inspected outlets failed to meet hygiene standards. Typhoon Ragasa hits southern China after killing 17 in Taiwan. If the Indian diaspora cares for its motherland, it must fight for it. Voicing his dismay, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor expressed his disappointment over the Indian-American community's silence on recent setbacks in Indo-US relations in the wake of steep tariffs and H-1B visa controversy. Speaking to reporters after interacting with a 5-member US Congressional delegation in Delhi, Tharoor said he was surprised by the lack of communication from the Indian diaspora in the United States.
5 members of the US House of Congress who happened all to be from the Democratic Party, and 4 of them were from California, but they had tremendous interest in India. I think the most important message that came out from them was that a lot of American opinion, including in the US Congress, is still very strongly committed to the Indian relationship, to the strategic partnership, that India is valued and that they remain determined to strengthen that relationship despite the recent setbacks that we are all familiar with, the H-1B visa setback, the 50% tariff setback, the sanctions on the Chabahar port, and various other things which have made life a bit difficult in the Indo-US relationship currently. I do want to stress that one of the points we raised was why the Indian-American diaspora has been so silent about all of this. One of the congresswomen said that not one phone call has come to her office from any Indian-American voter asking for her to support a change of policy. And this is something that is surprising, and that I think we all need to reach out to the Indian-American population saying, if you care about the relationship with your motherland, then you also have to fight for it, speak for it, and make more of an effort to press your political representatives to stand up for India.
Notably, Tharoor, who is chairman of the Standing Committee on External Affairs, led the Operation Sindoor delegation to the United States of America. One of the objectives of the all-party delegation after Operation Sindoor was to win the narrative war. Tharoor's dismay at the silence of the diaspora is not surprising. A strong feeling even after India won the real war was that we were losing the narrative war to Pakistan. Indian Americans are one of the most influential blocs in the United States. Let us look at the influence they wield in America. Indian diaspora represents a dynamic network of 5.1 million people, including 2.8 million first-generation immigrants. Indians are the second largest foreign-born group in US after Mexicans, accounting for 6% of all 47.8 million foreign-born residents as of 2023. They enjoy enormous economic clout. 16 of the Fortune 500 companies are currently led by chief executives of the Indian origin. Indians make 25% of the international students in the US universities. Around 60% of all US hotels are owned by Indian diaspora, driving 700 billion in hospitality revenue. The median income of the Indian diaspora is more than double that of the US and overall foreign-born populations. When India executed Operation Sindoor, its military objectives were clear and were achieved with precision. Yet the global media narrative didn't reflect it accurately. Despite suffering heavier casualties, Pakistan wasn't called out by the international outlets. In the 2024 US elections, Trump secured the highest ever share of Indian American votes for a Republican candidate. Microsoft's Satya Nadella, Alphabet's Sundar Pichai, IBM's Arvind Krishna, and Adobe's Shantanu Narayan were all born in India and have good proximity to the Trump administration. Still, Indian Americans tend to be relatively less vocal in protesting or raising their voices on India-centric issues. And it stands in stark contrast to the diaspora politics around Palestine, the way it has galvanized public opinion. So how can Indian diaspora leverage its influence on India-centric issues? When Palestinian issue can be leveraged so strongly, universities came to stand still in America, where do we fall short? On this, I am joined by Jen Dasgupta, former ambassador, and Xavier Rodriguez, founder and editor-in-chief, Goa Chronicle. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Dasgupta. Ambassador Dasgupta, where do we fall short? Palestinian diaspora, or the diaspora which associates with the Palestinian issue, cutting across nationality, can bring halt to American cities, stop the curriculum activity in universities, but we are rich, strong, progressive, almost like what Parsis are to India, contribute so beautifully to the American economy, but our narrative falls short, and what Shashi said in his bite was so prescient.
I think there is a distinction between what the Palestinian situation is and what we have been facing since President Trump came to power. So that in the case of the Palestinians, of course, I won't venture into making a big statement, but it is a question of, I think, a huge humanitarian crisis, bordering on genocide, children getting starved to death, etc., etc. So I would differentiate it from the trade aspects of President Trump's actions, three of them. One is the tariffs, 25 and 25%. The second is the Chabahar port withdrawal of the waiver. And the third one is the most recent one of 100,000 visa fees for H-1B visas. So I think that is the difference. The second point I wanted to make is that Indians, I think by nature, I would say, they are not in the habit, especially when they go abroad, of protesting very vociferously or very robustly against the government. That is something which I think is something which has been noticed in other countries as well, including in the UK and in other European countries. The third point is that Indians are now getting more and more representatives in the House of Representatives. There are 6 of them now in a house of, I think, about 435 or 437. So it is growing in numbers. And the last point I wanted to mention is that this present government of MAGA, I think there is this overhang of white supremacy also coming in a small way at least. So Indians perhaps are slightly hesitant to come out and attack or criticize or voice their concerns about President Trump's actions, because they can be subjected to a certain amount of ridicule or action from the MAGA right.
Okay, Savio, your opening comments, and then I'm going to go into certain specific issues. Savio, how do we, I know you are the master on this issue of narratives. How do we deal with this? One is the issue of pressure group. Fine, it's a contested field, but we are there at such influential places. We are failing to set a narrative in place. I mean to say, there's something which the community can do for Bharat.
Well, the Indian diaspora, particularly the diaspora in the US, is a very powerful diaspora, but its powers are limited within trade and economics and social and cultural structures. They are not very assertive, or rather very aggressive as far as political lobbying is concerned. If at all there is lobbying that's going on, or any sort of advocacy going on, that's predominantly within the trade space. And if you see the reaction to some of the Indian diasporas and leaders from there within associations and think tank during the trade conflict that happened with the US over the last couple of weeks, you will realize that they were more leaning towards Trump and Trump's intent, rather than trying to understand the entire situation from an India point of view. So they don't have a political or a religious cause to lobby as much as the radical Islamists do. And let's also be brutally honest about that. Radical Islamists or Islamic radicals, whichever way you want to call it, in the US does have a very strong pressure group. They do control certain aspects of the narrative. That has happened ever since they started to feel victimized, and a whole lot of immigration of Islamic radicals happened to the US, which is why in the Palestine conflict, which is why I disagree with the former ambassador, is primarily with regards to Gaza moving to a tipping point of genocide. Because the problem in Gaza is not something that existed now. It is a problem that existed in Gaza for decades. However, every one of the stakeholders with concerns to Gaza have failed in identifying the biggest problem that exists in the Arab world and other parts of the world, and that is Islamic radicalism. The difference now is, Kartike, is that many within America, in wanting, especially the Islamic radicals and their lobby, the left, in wanting to find a new devil to unanswered questions in America and to make America feel great again, is now making the Indians and particular Hindus demonize so that they can be the new devils instead of the Islamic radicals, because they don't have a political or a religious lobby. It is as simple as that. If it comes to trade, India has one of the best lobbies in the US, but when it comes to politics or religion, they don't have a lobby at all. They've never believed in it. That's the reason why they don't have it. The Islamic radicals need that, because I believe everything concerning them is revolving around their version of their religion and the rights they believe that exist within that religion.
Is it also because of the fact, sir, that sometimes people from different places take even extreme positions just because they have to prove their commitment? It's like if you look at the picture at the Oval Office, you had so many tech czars sitting there. So many of them were Indian, but instead of actually helping out.
Kartike, I just want to correct you there. They are of Indian origin. They are not Indians.
Indian origin.
Their first,
origin.
Their first priority will be America. They are not Indians. If
Indian
they were
origin.
Indians, they would be doing that in India.
Indian origin, but there's a lack of affinity there. Do we read too much into it when we see them, sitting in Oval Office, brushing shoulders with Trump?
Is that a question to me?
No, this is for Ambassador Das Gupta.
Yeah, I think then again, the problem is that they have to run their companies, and with President Trump now acting in the manner that he has been for the past few months, they are, I think, quite apprehensive that he may take some precipitate action which may hurt their business. So I don't think they would be, taking up the cause of India, because they keep saying that they are Americans first and they have their responsibility towards their companies and their shareholders, and then of course they have this affinity to India. So it is quite understandable that they would not really stand up and be counted for something which is, not at the top of their priority list.
So, Mr. Dasgupta, when we used to talk about India's soft power, well, it was stated that the PIOs, NRIs, and people who work with H-1B visa were supposed to be our leverage. I remember covering it in Vigyan Bhavan and Siri Fort so many times when all of them would descend there and they would get felicitated here that, they have come back to their country and how can, they can be closer relations. But when it came to the actual thing, it's not working out. Pravasi Divas, I really, that's what I was talking about, Ambassador.
Yes, I think, there is a fair bit of, logic in what the other panelist has been saying.
Savio.
That Indians, yes, Mr. Savio has been saying, because Indians are not in the habit of getting together on the basis of, let's say, the Islamic fundamentalists. And I was looking at the figures of people who have, 5.4 million people who of Indian origin who are there in the US. I think only about 48% belong to the majority religion. The others are all spread across other religions. So there are issues. I'm not saying that it is something which should happen, but it is something which is a fact, and we have to accept this reality.
So how do we set a narrative, Savio? This is something which this is a work in progress. I mean, so one will have to deal with Trump's presidency till 28. You can't wish him away. So which means that India will have to work out two things: our lobbies, setting the narrative, and selling the India story. I mean, so if we can't sell our India story despite being such a big country, so much of GDP, so much of heft, so much of this imagined leverage, then what are we talking about? We should be able to sell our story there and say that this is India's story. Pakistan, what happened during Sindoor? We won the war and they were winning a war on social media. Whereas we won the war. And Telegraph was selling the story that how Pakistanis with the help of Chinese jammed our Indian system. And that article went viral. Do you remember that article by the Telegraph there?
Yes, I do. Kartikeya, you raised very valid points, and so has Ambassador Dasgupta. But you realize you're not accepting a very prominent fact that stares us in the face all the time. As Indians, we are not built for narrative wars with the rest of the world. We are content with doing what we do best, talking about what good we do. We're not interested in the negative aspects of propaganda. In fact, we are not good at propaganda. Let's be brutally honest about that. The only propaganda that we are capable of is within the country itself, not outside. Which is why when you had the farmer protests, when you have the Shaheen Bagh, we actually lost the narrative as a government. We never won that narrative. We don't own any narrative in this country at this point of time, as far as the BJP government is going, or even as us as Indians. And that is because we have never been driven by lobbying. We are never driven by advocacy. We are not driven by narrative building. It is a failure. And that is what we need to work on. And I believe, as far as the US current relationships are concerned, there has to be a certain amount of lobbying, a certain amount of advocacy, but more importantly, a more amount of narrative building between India and the US, telling the world the truth. Every time I talk to a person from the minority abroad, even recently, just like it was made up yesterday by Duncan, everyone questions me that you're a Christian in India. Are you under threat? Are you under attack? I mean, where are they getting that information? We're about 2 crore Christians in India. Are we all under attack? Yes. Religious disputes or religious conflicts within nations happen. If you look at numbers in America, almost 2,200 hate crimes were in 2024 against the Jews. Does that mean that the Jews are the most hated community in America, or the community that's under threat? In much the same way, if you look at numbers in India, you're talking about almost like 600, 700 religious conflicts that may have happened between the communities. The Christian and the Hindus, Christians and the Muslims. That doesn't mean that entire community is under danger. But the narrative is spreading. The problem is the government has not really understood that narrative building in today's communicative world, with technology available, with WhatsApp, with YouTube, all these have an impact on the young mind. That is why somebody sitting in the US can ask me, knowing me very well, that I'm living fine in India, that I'm under danger. And then when I tell them I'm not, they say that's because you're a BJP person. You support the BJP, that's why you're not in this.
Okay,
How ridiculous an argument.
Absolutely, very ridiculous. Very quickly, Ambassador Dasgupta, do you think that our diplomacy also needs to change the way Chinese diplomacy functions, you know?
I do agree that we need to, now that our economic heft is increasing, we need to build a narrative in countries which matter to us. But one of the other things which I wanted to point out is that the narrative is also set in many ways by the audiovisual media. And if you look at the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and so on, and Fox TV for that matter, you will find that most of these are controlled by a right-wing kind of an ideology, and by somebody who controls a lot of the media in other parts of the world as well. So, and I am reminded, please, if you allow me a couple of minutes, when the July 2008 mini ministerial in the WTO collapsed, the right-wing media, including the Financial Times of England and the Wall Street Journal, everybody piled on to India saying that India was responsible. And it took President Trump's actions in his first term against the UK for them to sheepishly, the Financial Times, sheepishly acknowledge that it was the US which actually brought the talks to a standstill and sabotaged it, not India. So that is the kind of thing which you are up against. So the comprehensive view has to be taken. Narrative building, of course, will, and I'm sure that in the West, people are also very respectful of the Chinese technological excellence, their economic growth. But what kind of an image does China have? Have they been able to build up a narrative about the Chinese system of governance, about the democratic institutions or lack of them in China? No. So it is, I think, kind of a complex scenario that we are looking at. And we need to build a narrative. We need to get people together to voice the points of view that India wants to project. And of course, it will take time.
I think, the thinking is in the right direction. And Savio, I really don't have time, but I feel personally, because, I have at least experienced and moved in that orbit. So many years, at least, the government should have been put in place an international news channel. With so much of heft and money at place, we should have had our own international news channel. But we have not been able to do that. There are so many experiments. This is one small thing, which I'm saying. There are the hajar other things which are there. At least that could have been done, and that has not been done. Someone just telling our India story in New York, someone telling our India story in Lima, someone telling our India story in Tokyo, someone telling an India story in Moscow. There is in Russia today, there is, AFP, there is AP, there is Reuters, there is a CCTV, there is a French channel. There should have been an India channel. That is why I say charity begins at home. But I think Shashi Tharoor, when he said this, more needs to be done for Bharat. I think more commitment needs to be shown if we have to set our story right. It just cannot be left only to the government of the day. I think civil society also needs to come together. Yes, 30 seconds, Savio.
Okay, so let me put it as bluntly as possible. If there was something happening to Trump, if there was something happening to J.D. Vance or any of the American top 5 or top 6, you would have Indian channels talk about it. Do you think if anything happens to the top 3 or 4 or 5 in India, any of the American channels are going to talk about it?
No.
The answer is no. And that's where the problem is.
Yes, that's where the problem is. Thank you both of you for joining me. So this was on point 1, but don't go away, because after the break, there's an on point 2, and on that on point, we are going to talk about Jaishankar's statement, a pertinent point which Foreign Minister made, threat to multilateralism.
पापा इससे पहले जो चलाई थी वही ले ले।
चलती बढ़िया है। कुछ कह रहे थे?
नहीं, इनकी सर्विस वर्विस में डाउट था ना।
सर ओवर 300 टच पॉइंट्स, 170 सेंसिटीज।
हाँ, पर इन्हें सिर्फ 25 ही साल हुए हैं।
तुमसे तो ज्यादा ही है।
Skoda Fan Fest is live. Walk in today for a test drive and avail exciting benefits.
इट वर्कड, पापा मान गए।
Skoda.
अलौकिक, अद्भुत, अनुपम और भी ज्यादा भव्य होगा दुर्गोत्सव का जश्न। बेमिसाल 2 सीजन्स के बाद TV9 नेटवर्क एक बार फिर लेकर आ रहा है फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया सीजन 3। फैशन और लाइफस्टाइल का ग्लोबल एग्जीबिशन फैमिली और फ्रेंड्स के साथ होगा एक्सोटिक फन। TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया सीजन 3 का हिस्सा बने। 28 सितंबर से